telling time using an analog clock. An analog clock is an old-fashioned clock, like the one that you see here on the slide. We often nowadays use a digital clock, which tells us the time of day just using plain numbers. Time's measured during the day in seconds and minutes and hours. There are 60 seconds for every minute and 60 minutes for every hour. There are 24 hours in a day. Now, even though there's 24 hours in the day, when we look at a clock, there's only 12 hours on the clock. We separate the morning time from the afternoon time using AM and PM. AM means antemeridian, Latin for before midday. PM is postmeridian, Latin for midday. The morning AM time starts actually at midnight. And the whole morning leading up until 11:59 in the morning is AM. When it gets to be noon or midday, it switches to PM. So the afternoon and evening, all the way until we get back to midnight, is PM. The front of a clock is called a face. It's the face of the clock. The short hand is the hour hand, and the long hand is the minute hand. Remember, there are 24 hours in each day. This hour hand will travel to each time in AM, coming back to the 12 to start PM, and go all the way around the clock again until it gets to midnight. The minute hand each hour will go all the way around the clock, hitting each of the 60 minutes represented. If there's a second hand, every time the long hand moves one little part of the clock, one little minute, that second hand has gone all the way around the clock very quickly. There's a very specific direction that clocks move. It's called clockwise. You may have heard the term clockwise when playing games. Oftentimes, the directions in a game will be that the players take turns in a clockwise direction around the table. So when we look at an analog clock to see what time it is, it's important to remember how the hands move. So clockwise is the direction that the green arrow is pointing. And remember, the hour hand, the short one, moves more slowly. It takes an entire hour from it to travel from 10 to 11. The minute hand moves faster than the hour hand. It moves a different number every minute. 60 times it moves, and within each hour. Let's watch a quick time-lapse video. I want you to pay attention to the clock and the hands and how they move. Notice that each hand moves at a different pace. I especially want you to pay attention to the hour hand or the short hand, and notice that it has to get all the way to the next number before it is that time. That part can be tricky with telling time, is to know what hour it is. Go ahead and watch carefully. Now watch again. When the long hand gets all the way up to the 12, it will be 11 o'clock. Look at how the short hand or the hour hand moves. From the 11, it moves a little closer to the 12. It's halfway there when the long hand is at the 6. It's coming around the long hand and then up at the 12, and now we're at 12 o'clock. Watch it again between 12 and 1. We'll do one more hour between 1 and 2. It is very important to pay attention to where the hour hand is, or the shorthand. When it is between two numbers, it is always the hour of the smallest number. Counting by fives, the clock numbers. There are 5 minutes in between each number on the clock, and we count by fives, starting with the 1. So at 12, it's 00. It's 0 minutes, because it's the top of the hour, or the o'clock. We get to 1, 5 minutes have passed. And if you saw a clock that had the minute lines in between the numbers, you would count 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, or 5 spaces, which represent a minute each. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, top of the hour, or o'clock again. This never, ever changes. So once you memorize it, it's very fast to tell time when the long hand is directly on a number. We've talked a lot about memorizing things. It is very important to take the time. And sometimes you really have to focus and make a point of memorizing. It doesn't generally happen just by chance. So think about a clock and think about the numbers. This will help you in other parts of math as well. Reading the clock. So on the hour. We did an on the hour Kahoot today, and you all did very well with that. That is easy to tell the o'clock or on the hour times. So when it is on the hour, the small hand tells us what hour it is. So in this top clock here, we will see that it's pointed to the 2. So we know it's 2 o'clock, and we know it's o'clock because the long hand is directly up and down to the 12. 2 o'clock for the top clock. The bottom clock, we have the short hand is pointed directly at the 8, and the long hand is on the 12, so then we know it is 8 o'clock. And notice the 2 different ways you can write it. So on the top one, I have the number 2, and then I have the word o'clock. Or it can be written 2 with a semicolon and 2 zeros to represent there's been no minutes past 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock is the hour. Reading the clock, the quarter hour. So I did a demonstration about $1.04. A few days ago, you saw that. So you saw that it's 4 quarters make up $1. And remember, a quarter is sort of like a pizza or a pie, and a clock can be looked at the same way. So this one here has been divided into 4 equal parts. This helps us tell our time, because if we can memorize the quarter hours, then we can more easily tell what time it is. For example, this first section here, when we go to the 1, we have 5, 10, 15. The 3 is 15 minutes past the hour. You see here, I wrote it in time, it's 15 minutes. So if there was a shorthand pointing to 1 and the long hand was pointing to 3, we would say that is 1:15. That means that since it became 1 o'clock, we've had 15 minutes go by already. When the long hand is pointed to the 6, it is half past, or 30. So it'd be like saying 1:30. When the long hand is pointed to the 9, it is 45 minutes. Let's count together. 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. The 9 is always 45. And then we get back to the top, and we are at o'clock again, or 00 hour. 15 minutes past the hour, reading the clock. When the long hand is on the 3, right here, that is 15 minutes after the hour started, such as 3:15, or in the example of this clock, 1:15. If you notice, the shorthand is just barely past the 1. We know that it's the 1 o'clock hour. The long hand is on the 3, which means 15 minutes have gone by. So the time is 1:15. the hour hand will be very close to the number it just passed. Remember, if this shorthand is not directly on a number, whatever two numbers it's between, the hour is always the smallest number. Right now, it is barely past the 1, but it is between the 1 and a 2. 1 is smaller, so it's 1 o'clock is the hour. The long hand's on the 3, which we know is 15 minutes. So 1:15 is the time. Reading the clock on the half hour. So we're going to throw in a little division here. We know that 60 minutes makes up an entire hour. And we figure out things in half using division by dividing by 2. So 60 divided by 2 is 30, meaning 30 minutes. So half an hour is 30 minutes. And that is when the long hand is on the 6. The hour is the shorthand again. And so in this top clock, we can see that the shorthand is in between the 9 and the 10. It is closer to the 10. But remember, when it's between, it's always the smaller number. So 9. And then the long hand is on the 6, which is 30, or 9:30. Let's look at this bottom clock. The shorthand is between the 12 and the 1. So the hour is 12. Now, this is the one example that's a little tricky because obviously 1 is smaller than 12. But really, it's the number to the left. So it just is barely past because we go clockwise. It moves clockwise. So from 12 to 1 is the only tricky part. If it's between the 12 and the 1, the hour is always 12. The long hand is on the 6, so the time on this clock is 12:30. One more. Reading the clock at 45 after. When the minute hand is on the 9, this long minute hand, then it is 45 after the hour has started. So for example, maybe 9:45. Or if we look at this first clock, let's look at the hour. The hour is between 2 and 3. So we know that it is in the 2 o'clock hour. And the minute hand has gone all the way around to the 9, which is 45 minutes. That gives us the time of 2:45. On this bottom example, the hour hand is between the 10 and 11. So we know it's the 10 o'clock hour. The long hand is on the 9, which is 45 minutes. Let's confirm that. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Still 45, so we know if it's pointed at the 9, we can memorize that. So the time on the bottom clock is 10:45. Feel free to visit this video anytime you need a refresher. We're going to be getting into more difficult time telling, but for now we'll practice with on the hour, 15-minute, half an hour, and 45-minute clock times.